What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the wrong channel where we're going to be taking a look at another horror movie. That's right, we're still celebrating October because Halloween is coming up and we gotta celebrate the entire month. So today we're going to talk about a little gem of a movie from 1979 called Prophecy. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking about the Prophecy movie series starring Christopher Walken. And this is not that movie at all. This is not the one about the angels versus the demons to save humanity. This is the movie about the mutant killer bear. Now, like I said, this movie was made in 1979 when a lot of movies were being made during the 70s that were kind of pro-environmental and warned of the dangers of pollution and things of that nature. So, this movie takes a lot of that pretty seriously. It's directed by John Frankenheimer, who's done a lot of more well-known films since then. It actually has a pretty decent cast, too. It's got Armando Sante, who's been in pretty much everything. You can at least think of one movie that you know that he's in. It's got Richard Dysart, who would, a few years later, be in John Carpenter's The Thing, although he didn't fare too well in this movie, just like he didn't fare too well in The Thing. It's also got Talia Shire from the Rocky movies and from the Godfather films. But those are pretty much the main ones that you might recognize. It's also got Victoria Rakimo? I can't pronounce her last name, but it's the same woman who played the Indian nurse in Ernest Goes to Camp, and that's really the only other film that I recognize her from. But the acting in this movie is actually very well done, and there's a lot about this movie that's really well done that sadly, for whatever reason, gets overlooked. The acting is very well done. The film's score is amazing. The cinematography is also very good. There's a lot of great shots and lighting, and it's actually a pretty well-written story when you stop and think about it. Now, perhaps the most jarring thing about this film is that it's the most graphic PG movie that I have ever seen in my life. And that's because it was actually originally rated R, but then it was toned down from an R rating to a PG rating, which is very bizarre because I can't really think of too many movies that have made a transition like that. So there are still plenty of graphic scenes and things of that nature in this film. But anyways, I'm going to get a little bit into the plot now, so if you don't want this ruined for you and you still want to watch the film for yourself, go ahead and do that and maybe come back to the review later. So anyways, the movie starts out with this couple, the lead being Robert Foxworth. I don't really know what else he's in, and his wife, played by Talia Shire. Robert Foxworth plays this doctor who's been, I guess, hired by the EPA to go check out this, basically a paper mill, and how it's affecting this, like a reservation, like an Indian reservation, that refers to themselves as the OP, the original people. Basically, the reservation, well, it's not really a reservation, it's their land. They still live there. But the tribe, the OP, don't like what the paper mill is doing, and the paper mill wants the OPs to leave. So the doctor and his wife go down to where the tribe and the paper mill are to investigate to see what's going on. They stay in a cabin, and the first couple of days that they're there, they start noticing that the wildlife is abnormally large, and the grandfather from the OP tribe basically just kind of chucks that up to being, you know, this is like God's land, everything's bigger here, stuff of that nature. Basically, he believes the folklore of his tribe, his people, and, you know, this is our land, this is what our reward is. But the doctor, he's not quite entirely convinced. And so he takes some more samples. He goes to the paper mill and is shown around by the representative of the paper mill, who's played by Richard Dysart. And Richard Dysart is actually really good in this film. It might even be a reason why John Carpenter decided to cast him in The Thing, because he's really good at playing two different facets. He plays two sides of a person in this movie. So he starts off by telling Robert Foxworth's character, the doctor, that, they're not doing anything wrong. Everything's fine. There's no pollution going on. The only chemical that they use to dye the wood or the paste for the paper is chlorine, and all of that is kept within the plant and not released out into the wild. So the doctor's a bit skeptical. He decides to go out, take a look for himself, and he sees that while there's no chemicals in the water, he finds mercury in the mud along the banks. And he decides that it's the mercury that's having this effect on all the animals, making them larger and mutating them. Well, as it turns out, shortly after discovering this, it cuts to a family that's going on a camping trip with a dad and two kids. And they get attacked by a giant mutant bear. And not in a pleasant way either. Pretty graphic, actually. And in a sad way, kind of funny, too. Because I swear, this little kid, for whatever reason, zips himself up in a sleeping bag up to his chin, and rather than unzipping it, getting out, and running away, he stands upright, still zipped up in the sleeping bag, and starts hopping away from this giant mutant bear. So obviously, you can guess that doesn't work out very well for him. So the family gets slaughtered by this giant mutant bear, and the sheriff finds out about it. They find the campsite where all of the havoc is gone on, and they get, for whatever reason, the paper mill people involved, because Richard Dysart shows up for whatever reason. I don't know how he's involved with the police investigation, but he is. But the police show up to the Indians' land, the OP's land. I don't really know quite what to refer to it. I mean, it's their land, but it's not a reservation because it's not something the government set aside for them. So they just showed up to the OP's land in search of the main OP, I guess, played by Armand Assante, called John Hawkes. Because they pretty much have an axe to grind against his character. And this is finally the thing that they can use to take him down, to get him off of their backs. So they go after him. He runs off, gets away. But the doctor and his wife want to see the campsite where this family had stayed to see what exactly happened, to get some evidence if there is any evidence, because again, the doctor believes something's going on with the wildlife. So they take a helicopter ride over to the campsite. It starts to storm really bad. But they're looking around, and they find evidence of a really gnarly giant creature, because they see some claw marks up in a tree like 15 feet high. And in addition to that, they also find two mutated bear cubs. One's dead, but one's still alive. And they decide, this is our proof. We need to hang on to this. This is what we can use against the paper mill company. So they decide to take it with them, but they can't go back in the helicopter because the wind is too heavy and it's too forceful, so they wouldn't be able to take off. So they decide to go to the OP's grandfather's camp area, which is like a half a mile away. So they go over there, and it's of course at this time the crying from the one living baby bear cub attracts the giant mutant bear, and it just comes in and it wrecks the campsite. They go down into these tunnels and hide from it. And let me say something about this, because this is something the movie does very well. It builds tension, and it has a certain way of doing it where something hectic will happen, or they'll have something that's about to happen where the music will just die out and it'll be silent, and you'll just see the characters sitting around kind of waiting for something to happen. And it's a really good technique that they use to build tension, but I feel like they do it too many times because they do it with the family that's camping. They do it when they're at the campsite hiding in the tunnels. They do it again later when they're taking a truck ride further to their cabin to get away from it again. And they do it yet another time when they're at the finale of the movie, which I'm not going to spoil yet, but I'll get to it. So they do it like 4 or 5 times throughout the movie. Again, it's very effective, but it seems like they just overdo it. So anyways, they're all holed up in these tunnels underneath the campsite. And it all goes quiet, so they peep up to see if the bear's gone, but no, it's not, and the sheriff gets it. Gets his face and throat mauled. But eventually it does go away, and for whatever reason, the grandfather's up there, just standing there watching all this happen, but the bears don't attack him. And the only explanation I can have for that is because he's wearing like this giant fur coat. So I guess maybe the bear mistakes it for another bear or something, but a really small bear. So it's at this part where, you know, the character played by Richard Dysart has seen the mutated baby cubs, and he's all of a sudden having a change of heart. Like, he's horrified by what he sees. He admits that he knows that the paper mill had been polluting the water and that there had been mercury in it, but he had no idea that this was the effect. So this is basically like the whole environmental point that the filmmakers are trying to drive home. Don't pollute, because this is what happens, and Richard Dysart just feels terrible. So he has a change of heart. He decides to play the hero and go to the microwave tower. That's what they call it anyways for some reason. To the microwave tower to transmit some message to get help. And the rest of the people decide to all pile into a jeep and go and try to get back to their cabin or just away from there to a safe point. So along the way, Richard Dysart's character makes the hike, like a 6 or 7 mile hike to this microwave tower. And as soon as he gets there, the damn mutant bear shows up and just gets him. It's kind of like, really? You made it that far and you're just gonna, at the last second, get taken out like that? Alright, whatever. But that's the last of Richard Dysart's character, and there's no mention of it later on by anyone or anything like that. He's just gone, and that's it. So the rest of the people are in the Jeep. It's at night again, and they're driving along some kind of rocky path. And again, the music cuts out. They're driving along, and all of a sudden, the bear pops up again, and just completely wrecks the fucking Jeep, knocks it on its side, knocks everyone out. The poor helicopter pilot is still strapped to the Jeep, because he was injured earlier on, so he's strapped in there in some kind of harness. Jeep's on its side, everyone's running away, but Armand Asante's character is still there trying to free the poor helicopter pilot. And then the bear comes into its line of sight on the side of the truck, and Armand Asante just kind of looks at the bear and he's like, "Well, I tried," and runs off. And the poor helicopter pilot is just still stuck there, and the bear comes up and bites his head off. And it's at this point that the rest of the characters, the doctor's wife, Armand Asante, and Armand Asante's wife, and the grandfather are all running down towards the shore of the lake. And they're going to swim across the lake to get to their cabin. So the first 4 characters start swimming, and then the grandfather stays behind. And here comes this giant mutant bear down to the grandfather. And the grandfather's just kind of standing there because he believes that this giant creature is actually a god kind of like a protector for his tribe sent by God or something like that. They actually have a name for the creature, if I can find it. I can't remember. Well, according to IMDb, he's just called Mutant Bear, and it's actually played by Kevin Peter Hall, the guy who played the Predator in the original Predator movies. But they do have a name for the creature. God, it's gonna bug me if I can't think about it. No, it's not Inside Out Bear. I mean, that's what it looks like, but that's not its name. Alright, well, I couldn't find the name for this stupid creature. Nope. It's not even on there either. Okay, then. Couldn't find the name for the stupid creature, but basically what happens, the grandfather is standing there at the edge of the lake, confronting the giant bear, whatever it is, whose name I can't find for the life of me. But he's like talking to it, thinking that it's there to help them or it's sent by their god. And then the very next thing that you see is the people are swimming in the lake. They look back at the grandfather, and the giant bear just has like this rag doll, throwing it around in the air, and you can see his limbs just like flailing around. It's way funnier than it's supposed to be scary, and I can't help but laugh every time I see it. But the movie doesn't end there. They keep swimming across the lake. They get to the cabin on the dock, and they're looking back at the bear who's standing on the shore, and it starts to walk into the lake like it's coming out after them. Well, they're just sitting on this dock staring at the thing, waiting to see what happens. And it keeps walking out into the lake until eventually its head goes under the water. So the main doctor guy is like, "It drowned! It drowned! It drowned!" But then they start seeing air bubbles coming up as it's getting closer. And they're just still sitting on the dock watching. Watching and waiting as the bubbles keep coming up and keep getting closer. And then eventually, of course, the bear does pop back up out of the water and comes after them. So they all run into the cabin. The doctor grabs a shotgun or a rifle, and it only has 2 rounds. And Armando Sante grabs a bow and arrow. So here comes more tension again, where the music cuts out, it's all silent, you can hear the bears huffing and puffing, and then everyone's looking around, it's doing all the close-up shots of the characters. And then all of a sudden, boom! The bear rips the roof off of the cabin, and the doctor just blasts it with a shotgun, and he goes, "Brrr!" and falls back out of frame. They're like, is it dead? And then it does that whole tension-building thing again, where the music cuts out, showing close-ups of everybody. Then it pops back up again, of course, so he shoots it again, and Armando Sante loads some arrows into it. But then it tears down the rest of the wall, so they decide to run out. And as they're running out, Armando Sante's wife gets hit by a beam and gets knocked down. So this enrages Armando Sante, so he basically starts to run out and fire arrows berserk mode into this giant bear, and then the bear just finally does a nice little uppercut maneuver, launches Armando Sante's character into the air and down on the ground, and he's gone. But it's at this point where the doctor guy loses it. So he grabs an arrow. He doesn't really fire it with the bow, though. He just kind of grabs it, and the bear picks him up. He just starts going stabby, McStab, stab, stab all over the bear's face. And he like stabs it in the eye, and the eye just bursts, and a geyser of blood goes flying out. Again, this is rated PG. But then the bear dies and falls back into the lake. And everyone's just standing up on the dock looking at it. And then the doctor guy just goes insane again, grabs another arrow and goes, "Ah!" Jumps into the lake on top of the bear and just starts stabbing it again and again and again and again. And then it shows the 3 characters, the bear dead, sinks into the lake. 3 characters are there, they're fine now. And it just cuts immediately to them in a plane flying away. Just very abruptly, just the doctor and his wife. And they're flying away, tra-la-la-la-la, everything's happy and hunky-dory, and the movie just pretty much ends there. I mean, there is one more thing, but I'm definitely not going to spoil that, because, yeah, I just want the viewers to see that for themselves. But yeah, this is actually a pretty underrated, lesser-known movie from the late 70s, which I really do enjoy. I like the special effects that are used in it. I really like the score and the cinematography. Like I said, the acting is also very well done, and it's not your average run-of-the-mill, be good to the environment kind of exploitation movie like Kingdom of the Ants or Empire of the Ants or stuff like that, where it's like, well, man's interfering with nature, and this is what happens to nature. It's not just a cheap gimmick like that. There's actually a good bit to this movie. Even if the message didn't really land, it's still a pretty decent movie. It's a really good, fun watch. So if you can find it, I'm not sure if the DVD is out of print now or not. You might be able to find it on Amazon streaming too. I'm not entirely sure, but I don't think that it's on Netflix. So if you find it, give it a check-see. Like I said, it's not the Christopher Walken movies, not that Prophecy series. It's a standalone movie, and they've even titled it Prophecy, the Monster Movie, just so there's no confusion. But anyways, thank you guys again for watching. Just another horror movie under the belt for October. Probably going to be plenty more to come, so stick around. What the fuck was Quetzalcoatl? That wasn't his name. Krakatoa? That's gonna bug me.